Live with CDP Sports Talk, a weekly sports and entertainment podcast sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet. Live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And on audio via Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Anchor FM, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Radio Public, and TuneIn. Now, here's your host, Chris Palme.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 36 of Live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet Dealership, 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles, or give them a call at 519-824-0210, or you can email them at info@barrycullen.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is on weeknights from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta, the home of Southern Talk and Sports. Good afternoon, everybody. And on this, Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023, hard to believe, I have my guest on today. His name is Jim Barker. He is currently the CFL and TSN in-studio analyst. He's also a five-time Grey Cup champion, 1997, 2002, 2008, 2012, and 2022 with the Toronto Argonauts. And he's also a former head coach, GM, vice president, senior advisor. He's pretty well done everything in the game of football. So I'm really looking forward to having Jim Barker on today. Good afternoon, Jim. How are you doing?
Hi, Chris. Doing great. How are you?
Doing good, and this is the best time of the year for me with all these sports going on. The CFL's halfway through their season, and the NFL starting up as well.
And college football kicks off in 4 days, so it's everywhere. This is the best time of the year.
Yes, and I will be at the Guelph Griffins home opener here in Guelph on Saturday, working in the camera as well. So I'm looking forward to the 2023 Griffin season as well here.
Yeah, they hopefully they'll get things a little together this year, and I know they had a rough year last year, and hope for nothing for the best for the Griffs.
First thing I wanted to talk to you about, Jim, what are your thoughts on the 2023 CFL season so far as a whole?
Well, it's been an interesting start to the season. I guess we're halfway through for a lot of teams. There's basically tiers of teams. You have, the Argonauts, the Bombers, and the BC Lions kind of in one tier. And then you have Montreal and Saskatchewan kind of in the next tier. And then you have, the rest of the teams, Calgary and Ottawa and Hamilton and Edmonton, battling in that last tier to get into the playoffs. So, it's been a very interesting. Games have been, any team can beat any team. I think we saw that. I don't think anybody gave Saskatchewan much of a chance at home. They were 11-point underdogs going in, and they won the game fairly convincingly and physically took it to the BC Lions. So it was an impressive game for Saskatchewan. But we've had that kind of thing all year. We had Ottawa, Montreal the night before go right down to the wire. And Ottawa, I just didn't see any way they lose that game. But yet, in the end, they come out and they lose in the end. And Montreal comes back to beat them and maintain stronghold on second place in the East. And basically, Montreal holds the tiebreaker on them also. So it makes it even tougher for Ottawa because they've now lost tiebreakers to both Hamilton and Ottawa. So it's been a fantastic, and then Edmonton got their first win, which was not we just didn't know when it would happen, knew it would happen. And the young Canadian quarterback played fantastic. That's, Trey Ford got a little bit of action last year, but he looks to be a guy who could be a CFL type of quarterback. He's got a strong arm. He hasn't been the most accurate, but that'll get better. and he's got extremely great quickness in the pocket and seems like a natural feel in the pocket. And he's very difficult in the open field for people to tackle one-on-one. So, hopefully that bodes well for the Elks as they get ready for their first home win. They're hoping this week, as Ottawa comes into town, and Ottawa's 3-7. I mean, this is a great opportunity for the Elks to get this monkey of 23 straight, I think, Chris, home losses in a row, which is pretty tough. It goes back to 2019. So hopefully they get that monkey off their back and they can just focus on games from here on out. And, their next games, they've got Ottawa this week, and then they got 2 in the Labor Day matchup with Calgary, who is, again, very, having a down year. And, you just never know. Within a matter of 3 weeks, Edmonton could be right in the thick of the playoff hunt.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts of the change with Victor? And they brought in a new gentleman, intern Rick. Thoughts on those guys, Rick taking over for Victor? And also, what are your thoughts on Chris Jones and that coaching staff? And do you feel long-term they can turn around this franchise?
Well, I said on the air that Edmonton needed to go with an experienced guy. And, I just felt like they needed someone who understood the league for this interim position right now, because they're struggling. And Rick Lawlisher is one of the best presidents in this league. He was with Edmonton for a number of years. Then he moved and went to BC as they've gone through their transition into becoming they're drawing great fan crowds to their home games. So Rick knows what he's doing. He knows the league. He knows the people in the league you have to talk to get things done. Victor Cui came in, did a good job. I mean, Victor Cui did everything he could do in his knowledge, given his knowledge of Edmonton and sports, that he could do. But when you don't understand the inner workings of the CFL, it's a very difficult job, because the CFL, is just different than other leagues. It's what makes it such a beautiful thing. Why I love the CFL, because it's just unique in its ways. And if you don't understand the way things operate, it can be very difficult to run a club.
Wanted to ask you this as well, Jim. What's your thoughts on one guy doing both jobs nowadays?
Well, I think it's really a difficult thing. I've been a head coach GM. Mm-hmm. I did it for 1 year. I actually went in as the head coach GM, but Adam Rita was still in Toronto, and I didn't want to fire him, so we just kept him there as the GM. And then the second year I became the head coach GM. And it's just, again, I learned GM differently than the guys who were like Chris. Chris has worked with me 3 different times, and I'm the first one that gave him an assistant. I think we called him an assistant GM. But he never was a GM in terms of, I took 5 years in Calgary where I didn't coach. All I did was learn the whole scouting game and how you deal with, the NFL, the colleges, both down south and north of the border, and how you build teams. And actually, the guy I was with, Ted Hellard, who was one of our owners in Calgary when I was learning that job, is the guy who wrote the current salary cap. He was the one behind it. And so I learned a lot about dealing with those things. Today you got Chris Jones struggling. You got Orlando Steinauer struggling. You got Dave Dickinson struggling. There's 3 guys that are doing both jobs. And I think it changes the complete dynamic of your football team when you're the head coach and GM. And it's why I stepped down. When you're a head coach in there talking to your players, and which I was in 2010 when I first came back to Toronto, and I won the CFL Coach of the Year, and players respond to you differently. As soon as I became the head coach GM officially, things change, and the players, everything you do is amplified, and Players, it's just they're not as open. Things are different when you're in that position. It's hard to describe. It's why I stepped down and hired Scott Milanovich, because I felt it was the best thing for the organization. Well, guys are stepping in now and becoming, head coach, GM, and in Orlando Steinauer's case, he's not the GM, he's the president. And again, is that the right thing to do? I just don't think it's working right now for people. I think the natural, I'm going to use the word friction, but the natural things that happen between a personnel office and a coaching staff need to happen, because coaches see players one way. They really do. And I was a coach most all my life, but I then became a personnel guy. And I learned when you sit at the personnel table at lunch, the vernacular and the words they use, totally different than what the coaches use. When the coaches are talking about a player, they don't use the same kind of words that scouts do. And I think one of the things that happens are that coaches don't really understand scouts, and scouts don't really understand coaches. And there's a natural friction that happens. Well, some of that is really healthy. And I think you need to be able to have lively debate and arguments without guys getting feelings hurt and that kind of thing. I don't think you can be successful without that. So I think teams that choose to go the route, you mentioned Chris Jones in Edmonton, and Chris is everything. He's the head coach, he's the general manager, he's the director of football operations, he's everything. And it's just very difficult to be the best you can be at everything when you're trying to do one thing great. And that was why I stepped down. I didn't think I could be great doing two things. And I made the decision after my first year doing both and said, this is not right. And I hired Scott Milanovich as our head coach. I focused on being the general manager, and we won the Grey Cup that year. I just think to be done right, there's a certain amount of that friction that has to happen. There's a certain amount of different types of eyes looking at players, and the coaches bending a bit in what they might think, and the scouts bending a bit in what they might think. I always tell scouts, you need to go sit at the coaches table some, because they're not going to use the same kind of talk you talk about, when you talk about a guy's vertical sets and things, and they don't talk that way. They don't talk about, a lot about 40 times and about things that scouts talk about. So I say, go sit at the coaches table and learn what they talk about. And I tell coaches the same thing. Sit at the scouts table and listen to what they talk about. Listen to how they talk about players. And there's positives and negatives with both, but I think you need both to get the best possible organization you can get. Again, I think you look at the top teams in the league right now, with Winnipeg, and they have Mike O'Shea, who is strictly the head coach, doesn't want to do anything else, and Kyle Walters, who is the general manager, and then you got Ted Gavaya and Danny McManus, who are out scouting players. And in Toronto, you have Ryan Dinwiddie is the head coach, and then Michael Clemens is the general manager. And then you have Alex Russell and Vince Magri. They're John Murphy there now that are out scouting players and bringing players in. So again, I think that when you look at the teams that are having the most success, the BC Lions, you got Rick Campbell, who is a part general manager, but Neil McAvoy is there. And Neil McAvoy can take on that bad guy that the GM sometimes has to be, that the head coach needs to stay away from. That Chris Jones, Dave Dickinson, those guys can't do that. They can't have that bad guy GM because there isn't one there. So that's kind of in a nutshell my thought on the whole head coach GM thing. I think it's when I first got hired in Toronto, Dale Lastman, who is very high up in MLSE, and he said the big thing with the Leafs, the Raptors, all teams is the friction between coaching and personnel. And with coaches, it's always, we just don't have good enough players. And with personnel, it's all, we've got good enough players, we just don't coach them well. And so, you know, he said that is the number one thing in sports that creates issues for organizations in his mind. So again, I think a lot of that is healthy, and finding the right blend is where it's at.
Also, too, Jim, I wanted to ask you this as well. Just doing one role is a lot, but doing two roles and then your family life on top of that, how difficult was that, being able to juggle your family life with being a coach and the GM at the same time as well?
Well, I'm a big believer that, again, there's a whole thing now about work-life balance. And when I first came into this business, there was no such thing as work-life balance. It was work, and then you had your family. And I honestly believe to achieve great things in life, you have to sacrifice. If you don't sacrifice something, it's hard to ever achieve at the highest level. And I mean, I look back now, and I've sacrificed being a great husband and being a great father. And, you know, I have great relationships with my kids. You know, I ended up divorced. And again, it was just, it's difficult doing it all. And while work-life balance, I think, is a great thing. And I wasn't able to find that. So coaching when I came in was, you're there at 4 a.m. and you're there till you get it done. And it may be 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night. And that was just the way you did it. You outworked everybody. You felt like more hours was outworking. I worked for a guy in San Francisco, Vic Rowan, who, when I was there, Mike Holmgren was also there. And then Mike and I left, and Andy Reid came in. He and Dirk Cutter replaced us, two guys that became NFL head coaches. So that was kind of how you were just taught that if you want to be in coaching, this is the way it is. And again, for me, I'm trying to understand the work-life balance thing. I know Orlando Steinauer is very big on work-life balance and making sure that you take your time to keep that part of your life, that you don't become just totally ingrained. Honestly, Chris, for me, that's hard to do. I'm all in, and one thing, it's hard to be, multiple enough to be a great husband, to be I'm single now, so I can say that, to be a great husband, to be a great analyst, even to be great at anything. I haven't found the magic elixir that can allow me to do that. So again, I everything I do, I go in full go, and it's difficult for me. So I'm probably not the right guy to talk to about work-life balance, because I do believe it's important. And when you can figure it out, then that's a great thing. I haven't. I'm going to be 67 here soon, and I just haven't figured it out yet.
You still got the coaching bug in you, or are you kind of content right now doing what you're doing with the CFL and TSN? And I think you guys are all doing a great job on there, by the way.
Oh, thank you for that, Chris. I know that everybody on there works very, very hard. The producers, the director, the whole thing is you would be shocked at the amount of work that goes into it. But I appreciate the applause on it. In terms of the whether I want to go back to coaching, I don't think I like running a team. I don't know that I want to coach again. I might coach if I could coach in a league where I could coach for 3 or 4 months, that might be a fun thing. I don't think I want to coach in the CFL again. It's a grind. It's just a grind. I'm just not sure that's what I want to do. I really do love the stuff I'm doing with TSN now. I really feel over the years, with all the different jobs I've had, I've developed a connection with fans, and I find it important that I give a perspective that's maybe different than a former player. And we have a lot of former players. There's some former coaches up there. Lapo's a former coach, and Matt Dunnigan's former coach. But I give a little different perspective because of my general manager. I'm the only one who was also a general manager for a number of years. So I can give a perspective that maybe is just a little different. And for me, the CFL is all about the fans. And this is my opportunity to give back to the CFL what I've been so lucky to get here. It's been a labor of love. I don't feel like I've ever worked a day in my life. I moved here from California, and I'm now a Canadian citizen. And
awesome.
I love it up here, and I love the people of Canada, and I love CFL fans. And even here in Toronto, there's a CFL fan base that love Canadian football. And I just think that we need to send our message out that this is the greatest 3-down football in the world. And I know you're on an Atlanta station. People in Atlanta who get a chance to learn the 3-down game, totally different than the NFL game. There's a lot of guys in the NFL that can't play in our league. They just can't. They're just, because of the field and the rules and it's a different game. It's like saying, 6-person volleyball indoors and beach volleyball is the same thing. It's totally different. It's beach volleyball is played with 2. We play with extra players on a wider field. And it's just such a great game. My kids grew up with American football. I spent 20 years at every level of the NCAA in the States. And so they grew up. That was when they were first born. That was what they knew was American football. And when they came up here, they just loved the CFL. They love the game and the way that people treat the game. And I know when they were little kids, they remember, going when I was in Toronto back in '97, when we had Flutie, we had good teams, and the Ticats hated us. And we go to Ivor Wynne Stadium, and they'd say, "Dad, those fans, they care so much." And I got hit with a battery one night. They thought it was hilarious. They thought that, they just love their team. So, that's the way Canada is. And all you have to do is go to a Grey Cup. And I would encourage anybody who doesn't know much about the CFL, but you want to learn about it, go to a Grey Cup festival. Just get there on Thursday and go attend the different things that go on. And you will see the difference between the CFL and the NFL, because you go to a Grey Cup festival, that's all about a celebration of Canadian football. It's not one team. Everybody wears their stuff for their team, but you see BC Lion fans, Saskatchewan Roughrider fans, Calgary Stampeder fans, Argos fans, all in the same room, dancing and drinking and having a great time, celebrating what is the Canadian Football League. When you go to an NFL thing, it's all very corporate. It's all very, it's not about fans at all. It's about everything else that brings money. And that is the beautiful thing to me about the CFL is it's older than the NFL. It's a different game, and it's much, much more exciting. It's like I say, we're not trying to compete and say we're 4-down football or compete with the NFL. They're the greatest 4-down football in the world. We're the greatest 3-down football in the world. And I would love to see Randy Ambrosie and some of the things he's doing with global. Go to Australia and go to Europe and teach 3-down football. Get some other countries playing 3-down football. It's much more conducive to their stadiums because you play on soccer fields. Our field is 65 yards wide, exactly the same as a soccer field. An American football field is 53 1/3 yards. So there's a 12-yard difference in terms of width. Lengthwise, ours is 110 yards, same as a soccer field. So we're much more rooted in soccer and rugby and things like in Australia. We have a lot of kickers coming from there. Well, they were all rugby players and that type of thing. We should be playing CFL, Canadian rules football in those places and try to grow our game internationally that way and identify what we are, the greatest 3-down league in the world.
Absolutely. Hey, Jim, I was born in the 70s and I became a CFL Argonaut fan in 1979, thanks to my late dad. And I always loved the CFL, but I also loved the NFL. And I don't know why people can't just enjoy both leagues for what it is. There's just this saying with the younger generation, it has to be the NFL. And it's like, you can like both leagues. And I love the differences in both games, but I always promote the CFL, especially on my radio station. It's the same station that Rod Peterson's on, and I've had Rod on my show a couple times too, and he's a great guy to speak to. And your league, the CFL, has given me media opportunities. I just started this new career of mine at 47, and the Canadian Football League has been one of the leagues that has let me cover the league and the Toronto Argonauts especially. And I'm just trying to be I'm like an underdog. I'm sort of like an undrafted player, trying to switch careers at 51. And I'm just so grateful to the Argonauts, specifically Chris Belinovich and Mike Hogan, and this league's taken me on. And yeah, I'll let you talk.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. The NFL is a great game, and it is a totally different thing than what the CFL is. There's great athletes in the NFL, but you know what? There's great athletes in the CFL. I think, for example, people in Toronto right now, Chad Kelly, we had Doug Flutie playing here, who is one of the great athletes of all time. And I know there's people my age who kick themselves if they didn't go watch more of Doug Flutie when he was playing for the Argonauts. Well, there's a young guy playing here now, Chad Kelly, who is, he's just on he sees the game differently than a lot of the quarterbacks that we get here. He's in his first year of truly playing, and at the halfway point, he's a leading candidate to be the MOP. Well, when you get a player of that caliber and you have a chance to go down, for example, you can go to the CNE and get in free to the CNE and go watch a game and see one of the great young talents, I think, on either side of the border. I think he's a quarterback who, if he chooses to, now he's 29 years old. If he wanted to go to the NFL, he could. If he wants to stay here, I think he can do great things here. So, but the opportunity to see him playing in his launch year, I think is a great thing that fans deserve to see and don't realize what's right here in front of them.
In terms, Jim, you were with the team last year, the senior advisor. What have you seen differently from Chad this year than you did last year in terms of development into a star quarterback in the CFL?
Well, he's getting to play this year.
Obviously.
Last year, I saw it all year long. And McLeod Bethel Thompson stayed healthy and took us to a Grey Cup game. And there aren't many people, you could probably count on one hand the number of people, of quarterbacks in the world, I'm talking about in the NFL, that you could put into a Grey Cup game, their first meaningful snaps in a league that plays 3-down football, behind in the fourth quarter in that game, and he can bring them from behind to win the Grey Cup. Again, it's a rarity that is often overlooked that people need to understand. That is rare what that guy did. Now, all year long, I saw what kind of talent he has in practice every day. And, McLeod was our quarterback, and he deserved to be the quarterback doing those things. And like I say, he took us to the Grey Cup and we won. They're a much better team this year. Basically, I think Chad gives the offense a lot more because of his ability to move and run. I think it helps. Ouellette has been much more effective as a runner because of what Chad can do running the ball. He's able to stretch the field. He just does things that other people don't do. And now, again, their offensive line is solidified and is, I think people don't understand how good they are. I think they've given up 10 sacks this year. Last year, last year, it was basically they had some injuries. We had some injuries and things. And I think the way that team is constructed, where they have 3 American tackles. So if one's out, the other ones move in. And it's Cage and Trevon Tate and DeJohn Allen. So as long as 2 of those guys are healthy, they don't have to mess with their tackles, which in this league is vital. And then we got Ryan Hunter from about halfway through the year when the NFL made their final cuts, and he stepped right in, and he's a dominant player. He could move out to tackle if you wanted, but he plays inside, and their offensive line is just outstanding. So they're able to do a lot of things. So again, I saw a lot of it in Chad Kelly when he first came here. I felt he was the best just overall that I'd seen since I came into the league. You know, obviously I had Doug.
Wow.
So since Doug, he just has a natural way of seeing the field. He's going to make throws that other people will throw. I mean, there was one that last game, the touchdown to DeVaris Daniels.
Yes.
Was a corner route with a flat curl in front, and the flat curl was open. And he's stepping in like he's going to throw the curl, which is what 98% of the quarterbacks do. And he just puts a little extra air under and it goes to Daniels for a touchdown. That's what I'm talking about, seeing things. The read is, if the curls, you throw it. And he just felt that guy coming open and laid it out for him. Those are kind of things you don't teach. I mean, Ryan Dinwiddie says, you know, some of the stuff he does, I don't teach. And it can be frustrating sometimes for Ryan. And that's why I give him a lot of credit, because he's given him a chance to develop at a pace, not asking him to do too much, not putting too much on his shoulders. I just think he's being handled well. So it's an exciting thing for people in Toronto. And it frosts me when I look up and I see that there's so much room where people could go and watch this great player that they just need to know, yeah, he's in the CFL. But I guarantee you there's not 32 quarterbacks in the world better than him. And there's guys playing the NFL right now. I think Nathan Rourke down there, I was going to say, in 2 games in Jacksonville, he's totally outplayed CJ Beathard. But CJ Beathard's a vet. And you're going to have the vet. You want the vet there so when the things happen and that. But he's totally outplayed him, and he just needs his opportunity, and he'll get it. He'll get it. The rope with CJ Beathard, if something happens to Trevor Lawrence, will be shorter because of what Nathan Rourke has done in the preseason. So, again, he's showing – I think Nathan Rourke is showing what a year in the CFL – just developed him in, or he was here 2 years really, developed him into a quarterback that can compete very well on that level. Because I guarantee you there are NFL teams watching him saying, shoot, he's better than our starter. And so I just think that sometimes Nathan Rourke came and went, and a lot of people didn't get a chance to see him play. And like that's what happens in the CFL. That's why getting out to see these guys play, I think, is just vital.
Hey, Jim, I did see Jim Kelly play a lot. I see so many similarities to from Chad to Jim, except Chad's got way more athletic ability than his uncle Jim did when he played for the Bills.
Yeah, I remember Jim Kelly as more of a bigger, strong arm guy. And I just didn't know enough about Jim Kelly. I know John Jenkins coached Jim and thinks Chad has, as you know, to talk to what you're talking about, saw the field. He saw the field differently than a lot of those big drop back quarterbacks. And that's Chad's strength. Chad he sees things that other people don't see. And he did it all year last year in practice. And I think people are seeing now, is he going to make the occasional rookie mistake? He absolutely is. He's made one a game for 4 games at least, where he's just like, where are you throwing it? That's going to happen to young guys. But he's also made a ton of those, like, how did he ever see that? And I go back to watch the film to see how he saw it. And it's pretty mind blowing. So like I say, is he I think he's very different than what Jim was, but Jim was also a very physical runner like Chad is.
Yes.
And I think it's just that inner toughness that their family has. I know Chad's dad is Jim's brother, and, he's just the same kind of that, that tough Buffalo type guy. And, the fact that Chad's in Toronto, being a Buffalo kid, growing up in Buffalo, is just, it's perfect. It's for Chad, it's perfect. For Buffalo, it's perfect because they can come up and see, like you say, he's different than Jim, but he's still great like Jim was.
Absolutely. There was something else I was going to ask you. Oh, now I remember, Jim. I should have wrote it down. You've been in the game a long time. Do you feel when a young quarterback's with a team or a first year in a new league, do you feel it's beneficial for them to be the backup to learn from to a veteran starter in terms of developing for the future? Okay.
No question. And I think in hindsight on Chad Kelly, even, I think him getting a chance to sit for a year behind McLeod and learn and see the things, the ups and the downs of what being a starting quarterback in professional football is like. I think it'll be fantastic for Nathan Rourke to be able to be behind Trevor Lawrence and their backup right now, Beathard, just to watch the mental part of how you deal with different things. And I do think that's really important. I know that when Doug Flutie came in the league, he said he felt he needed some time to learn a lot of the little things. And, I look at Zach Collaros and Trevor Harris in our league now, who we had as rookies.
Yep.
And they came in and battled to be the third, and they learned from Ricky Ray and Jarius Jackson were the 1 and 2 quarterbacks. And then they became the 2 and the 3, though they moved up when Jarius retired, and learned from Ricky. And Ricky isn't going to sit there and lecture them or say, this is what I'm doing. He's just not, that's not Ricky. But they can watch how he handles situations, how he throws an interception, and then he comes back out and he's got the same tenaciousness. If you don't have that in this league, and it was one of the things I saw last week, Chad Kelly threw a pick 6 right before the half, and there was like a minute left, and he comes right out and throws a deep corner route. And that's where I give Ryan Dinwiddie a ton of credit, because not a lot of coaches are going to do that. A lot of coaches are going to say, I got a first-year guy, so we're going to just sit on the lead, go in, and we'll regroup at halftime. He didn't. He said, I'm going to let this kid play. And he threw the corner out, and then 2 plays later, they're in the end zone. And they've answered the thing. So, again, so much with a quarterback coming in the league is, if he has time, that's great. The coach and the coaching staff that he's paired up with is so vital. If you're with the right people, like I think Nathan Rourke with Doug Peterson is with the right guy for him.
Yes.
Doug Peterson was a quarterback. He was a backup quarterback for most of his career, but was a cerebral guy, a lot like Nathan is. Now, Nathan's got some athletic tools that Doug Peterson never had. But being able to play in the right system with the right coach who kind of gets you and allows you to grow. So often, a quarterback comes in and then he's put into a cookie cutter of this is what our quarterback has to do, and he can't do it. And I think you're seeing that with some of the young quarterbacks in this league. There's some that have come in and they're getting a chance to show who they are. Dustin Crum in Ottawa.
Absolutely.
I think it's a really interesting guy that is developing into, one of the guys who's down the road is going to be a quarterback. What is Drew Brown? Is he a guy who's going to be a starter in this league? So backups are getting a chance to play. They're getting a chance to learn. And again, I think that's an important thing. I think to put any guy into a league and play him right away is really a tough situation. And even though Chad physically was probably ready to play last year, he needed that year. He needed that year to sit and watch and learn.
Would you say that would be the same for Cameron Dukes and Byron Scott? They're both young guys with the Argonauts, and how important they can learn from Chad Kelly this season.
Well, there's no doubt that both of those guys, Cameron Dukes is different. Well, they're both from small colleges. Brian Scott played at Occidental College in LA, but then he went and played spring league and played in the USFL. He was like the third guy taken in the USFL draft. So he's been around a little bit in some of these peripheral leagues. Where Cameron Dukes, he went straight from Edward Lindsay to arena football and did some neat things. Now, Dukes is younger. It'll be interesting to see because I didn't think he played very well in the first game against Calgary when he had a chance to come in and he just wasn't. I mean, he did some decent things, but wasn't able to get them any scores and things like that. I'm anxious to watch Brian Scott and see, is he going to be a guy who can do it? Again, those guys they're learning. They're going to get their chance. Eventually, they're going to get their chance. The key is, can they stay motivated to learn? Can they sit there every day and say, okay, I'm preparing just like I'm going to play. I'm preparing the exact same way I would prepare if I was the starter. Can they do that when they're sitting as a third-team quarterback? And, Brian Scott, for example, right now sitting at third-team quarterback. Or does he get discouraged because Dukes goes in, he doesn't get any snaps, and say, I'm so far away from playing and not focused. Then he gets in the game and he's not ready. He's not mentally prepared. That's the difference between guys who make it and guys who don't. And you don't know until they get a chance to play. So, again, I think them getting a chance to sit in pro football, and especially guys coming from the U.S. to the Canadian game, I think them seeing it. Trey Ford, he's only played the Canadian game. So he knows the nuances and how the field can work for you. He's learned that through his time at Waterloo and growing up in Canada. So he doesn't have to learn some of the things that these other guys do, but he's got to learn how to become a pro and what it takes to be a professional quarterback, which is much different than being a U Sports quarterback where they're only playing 8 games a year and the playoffs are it's a totally different thing when you're playing an 18-game schedule and 2 exhibition games, and you're playing with professional athletes who are trying to feed their families, and the pressure is much greater than it is when you're at Waterloo. And if you don't win, you go to school the next day and that's the way it goes. Here, you don't win and they're looking at, okay, are you the problem? Do we need to replace you with somebody better? That type of thing. That's a whole different pressure. And Chad Kelly, the pressure of being a starter, I think Dane Evans felt that last year. He went from being a backup to being a starter. Yep. I think Jake Mayer this year and Chad Kelly are guys who went from being backups to being starters. And Jake Mayer last year played pretty well. But you got to remember, Bo Levi was there. So he's replacing Bo Levi. It's way different when you're replacing a guy. So this year, he looks around and there's nobody there. It's him or the team's gonna lose. Well, that kind of pressure is a lot different than when you're there as a backup and you got, okay, I'm stepping in, I'm doing this. And the pressure's nowhere near what it is when you look around and that whole team is on your shoulders. And I think we're seeing that with Jake. I think he's struggling a bit and his ability to fight through that, which again, Dane, the people in Hamilton felt he didn't, and that's why they let him go. They didn't know whether he was going to be able to be that starting guy. That's kind of what Jake's going through now. And Chad Kelly was a backup. Big difference. This year he comes in, he looks around, he's the guy. He's got 2 guys who have never even played. So there's a kind of pressure with that. Yet, Chad has answered the call very well.
One thing, Jim, we know about the NFL rules. Do you find that Canadian Football League is doing enough to protect the starting quarterbacks? Because I think, over 4 or 5 of them have been out with injuries. I know Kelly was only out for half a game, but I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Well, again, I don't know what you can do to protect them. I think that there's a problem with offensive linemen in this league. I think the one thing that the USFL and the XFL have done is strip the league of offensive linemen. Probably the biggest mismatches in our game are on the offensive and defensive line. Defensive linemen are the highest paid guys in the league. You got guys making a lot of money, Russian guys that, just can't handle it. If you're going to sit back in the pocket and protect with 6 all the time, and your quarterback's going to take hits, he's going to take shots. That's part of if that's what you choose to do. If you remember back in 20, 25 years ago, I mean, even when Joe Montana was playing, everybody was always under center. There was always tighter formations. There was a run the ball mentality. And even in this league, there was a lot more. When I came in the league, I was with Montreal. We had Mike Pringle and Mike Souls. It was a 2-back offense, and you ran the ball first. The league has now become a pass first league, and you're going to have that problem if you're going to choose to be a pass first team. You look at the top teams in this league, Winnipeg is a run. If they had their choice, they would run the ball all the time. They are a run first team. You look at the Toronto Argonauts, I think that they could be a run first team if they wanted to be. I think that they lean toward that toward the beginning of the season. I think one of the problems with teams in this league is they've become so pass oriented, and they can't, you just can't protect the guys. So I don't know that the league can do anything. I mean, they're talking about changing the ratio so you can play more Americans, but the problem is there's not a lot of Americans out there. I mean, I was, like I say, in the front office last year and went and did all the scouting and that type of thing. There's just, that league has saturated offensive linemen and taken a lot of the good ones away from the Canadian Football League. And, those two leagues are much more conducive to play and then boom, go to the NFL than the CFL. The CFL is probably a better league for a quarterback who maybe has had his shot down there, because this is a life league to me. This is some guys are going to move, but for the most part, you can come up here and you can play 6 to 10 years and really create a good life for yourself. And I don't think people look at the USFL and the XFL as playing more than a year. I'm going to play 1 year, and if I can make it, great. And if I can't make it, then I'm moving on. I don't think anybody who comes up to the CFL ever looks at it that way. The good ones may get a chance to get tryouts or go down there. But I think people look at even down south, look at the CFL as a career league, where they look at the XFL and the USFL as a feeder league, as a developmental league. And I just thank God that the CFL never went down that path. And I've never heard developmental league in connection with the CFL. And we need to keep it that way, because there's nothing developmental about the CFL. It's the greatest 3-down football in the world. And there are guys down in the U.S. that can't play here because they don't move well enough. It's a spatial game, yard off the ball. Everything happens in space. You have to be more athletic. The holes are bigger, so that it's harder to defense the field than it is in the NFL. The NFL is a more physical game. There's no doubt about that. They're right there. And, the size and athleticism of these big guys is huge. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know what the league can do, even changing the ratio, because I just think that there's just a dearth. There's just not enough offensive linemen to go around.
Also, I wanted to talk to you about expansion. I've been hearing Halifax since 1984. It's going on 40 years. And since I got you on here, Jim, why did the CFL fail in the States back in the mid-90s? Do you think that was a huge mistake going there, or do you think it was worth the gamble?
Again, I was not in the league then. I actually came up in 94
Okay.
In Saskatchewan as a guest coach, but I was only there during training camp. And that was the first year of expansion. I think a couple things. One is I think they found it to be a tough sell in the U.S., but I don't think they gave it a chance, because now that we're starting our season when we started, I mean, again, will people come out and support a Canadian Football League team in major cities down there? I'm not so sure of that. Again, I think the difference in the dollar is a huge deal. I think the ratio. Now, the BC Lions won in 1995 playing with the ratio against, I believe it was Baltimore, who had no ratio. But I think the ratio is a bit of an issue. One that I've heard that I think would be really interesting is Detroit, Windsor, is to create a Detroit-Windsor type of expansion team. And while I know that Hamilton and Toronto and Ottawa are all in Ontario already, what's interesting about that one is they're just across the river from each other. And they were talking about having a stadium that they could play games in both Windsor and in Detroit. I think that would be a great key into the U.S., because what the U.S. brings is a ton of fans, and obviously fans means money and things along those lines. But again, the expansion idea, I just think is, you don't want to water it down. You don't want to get to a point where you become the USFL or the XFL. And right now is just a poor time to do that. With those two leagues, I think one of them will drop within 2 years. I just don't think they can hold up. I was in the first XFL. I was part of that, and it was a great league. I enjoyed it. It was fun. There was some new ideas. I think they did a lot of things right. I think their contracts, genius. I think the way they handled cost certainty on clubs, genius. I thought a lot of the things they did were very, very smart. And unfortunately, the league only lasted a year, and they folded it. But I felt that league was on the verge, because it was its own league and not developmental, but it was developing players. We had Tommy Maddox, who went on and had a great career with the Steelers after he played for us. And so there were some players, some name players that were being developed in that league. So that was, I think it had a chance, but Vince was very adamant about not allowing the XFL to affect ratings in wrestling. And that's what was happening with some of those stations were showing our games, and they wanted a certain amount that was going to be drawn from WWE. Yeah. And he didn't want anything to do with that. As soon as that talk started, he says, we're just dropping the XFL. And he lost 120 million. He did it the right way, did most everything the right way. But that was one of the things that just, it didn't work. So I would hate to see us get tied up into something like that. The Canadian Football League, I think can it is what it is, but it's just such a great game that I wish they would have been able to hold it back there in the 95 4 and 5 seasons and give it a few years of playing when we're playing now, which is we start our games in June. And there's nothing down there until August when they start preseason, and then they don't start regular season until September. So that gives you June, July, 3 months to get going and develop some kind of a following. And yeah, if you're in Birmingham, you're going to lose a ton of people who are going to go to Alabama games. If you're in, wherever you're there, it's just college and pro football down there is the biggest thing. There's nothing bigger than college and pro football down in the States. And again, can the CFL fit into that? It's a bit of a stretch.
All right. Jimmy, you got time for a few more questions?
Sure.
Okay, this one I wanted to ask you as well. Just thoughts on being a part of the 2022 Toronto Argonauts as a senior advisor, and how did that came about? And when did you feel last year that this Argonaut team was capable of getting to the Grey Cup and possibly winning it, upsetting obviously Winnipeg?
Uh, well, it happened. Pinball called me after the season in December and asked me if I wanted to come on. He felt like Vince, who I had hired, Vince Magri and Alex Russell, were both young, and that I could come in and Pinball's got a lot of things going on, so that I could come in and kind of advise him in terms of, you know, different things. And it was good. It was fine. I enjoyed it. The great guys to work with. I had to leave TSN to do it, and after that, the first year with TSN, I really enjoyed that, but I just felt like this could be a good opportunity. So again, going back with a team, and because it was the Argonauts, which again has been a big part of my life since I've been in Canada, was important. In terms of when I thought we could win it, there was never a point I felt like, wow, we've really got a dynamite. I never really felt that. When we were playing in the Eastern Final, about halftime of that game, we're playing really well, and I thought, wow, we got a chance to go to the Grey Cup, and that was kind of the first time. I mean, it was a team that was a solid team, but we just couldn't quite get over that hump. I mean, I think we had what was our record last year, Chris? You would know.
I believe the Argos were 11-7.
Yeah,
11-7.
Yeah. So, there was more good things than bad things, but again, never that feeling of, wow, we're going to win this thing. In 97, when I was with the Argos, from day one, it was like, no, if we lose, it's because of us. We were just that much better. We had Doug Flutie, and I never had that feeling with this team. And again, it was just that was never the thing. And it seemed like, I thought we were doing a good job with keeping the depth of the team strong and building. I at the end of the season, after we had won the Grey Cup, looking at the team and how can we improve. And I think this year they're much better. They got younger and faster on defense, which was priority number one. And when you look at who's playing for them now, they're younger and faster. And that's what you have to do every year. And you have to let go of some good guys, or have some good guys who aren't playing anymore. And that's part of growing your team. So I think they're much better on defense this year. And then, like I say, Chad developing like he developed, and how he's responded. Again, you lose Chad Kelly, and they're every other team in the league. There's not because you got quarterback, you don't know what he's going to do. So, but as long as they have, but you can say that about every team. The same thing with Winnipeg. When Zach's there, they know they're going to have a great chance to win. When he's not there, which Drew Brown do you get? The one that came in relief against Edmonton and brought him back to a win, or the one that barely was able to win last week against Calgary team that just didn't play very well. So, and Drew didn't play very well, I think he would even admit. So again, you that's what happens when you have young quarterbacks. So again, this year's team is just so strong as long as Chad can stay healthy and they can keep him healthy. And I think that will influence a lot of the things that the way they run their offense from here on out, is trying to make sure that he stays upright, because he's going to play the way he plays, reckless. But as long as he's healthy, they'll be they're the favorites now to win the Grey Cup. And I told people before the season that if you're going to bet on a team, bet on the Argonauts, because nobody knows who Chad Kelly is now. By week 3, they're all going to know, and the odds are going way down. And sure enough, they have.
Do you see a possible Grey Cup rematch with Winnipeg in Toronto this year? Put you on the spot here.
Wow, that's a You know what? I'm going to defer on that one because
Okay.
I think the BC Lions, that game they're going to play in BC with Winnipeg, I think it's going to be a raucous crowd. Amar Doman might bring in the Rolling Stones to get that place sold out. He'll do anything to get that place sold out and make it very, very difficult for Winnipeg. If BC can win the division and have one game in Vancouver to go to the Grey Cup, I think they can do that. I think they're very, very talented team. Their line scares me a bit. Their offensive line, their defensive line is smaller, but their defense is so fast. And Ryan Phillips has done a good job of moving people around, and their secondary is good. They're a solid football team. So I can't wait. I think it's September 20th or in that range. I cannot wait to watch the BC Lions at home against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in September, which I think will decide who the winner of the West Division is. And at that point, whoever wins the West Division, I'm going to say is going to be have the lead in to going to the Grey Cup.
Okay, and Jim, we'll wrap this up. We got 4 more games this week. Which game this week are you looking forward to the most? Obviously, they're going to be great games, but is there one game specifically?
Chris, you know me. Every game I'm fired up for. I mean, we open with Winnipeg, okay? Playing Montreal. What is Montreal?
6-3. 6-3.
Team?
Yeah.
I know that. I know what their record is. Are they a strong second place team, or are they a team that hasn't played the good teams yet? We're going to find that out in Winnipeg. How great a game is that? Then Calgary, that one team that's beat Toronto, comes in for the CNE game. Now, how can you not be fired up about the CNE game? I mean, you have Hamilton going out to Vancouver. Okay, can they get off the schneid? And BC, could they lose 2 in a row? I think that's a tough one for Hamilton. And then you've got Ottawa and
Edmonton Sunday night.
And Edmonton. Now, let me ask you this. Can Edmonton break the longest streak in North America, home losing streak in pro sports? They got a great shot against Ottawa. They got a great shot. So how can you not be fired up about every game, man?
I agree, and I like this.
I can't pick one.
I have some friends that don't like this Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but I'm a football fan and a CFL fan, and I like having a game Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday night. I think it's tremendous what the league and TSN have done with this scheduling.
And it's done great for the ratings. I think the ratings have been fantastic on it. The Sunday night games have been spectacular. I mean, I don't know that we've had a bad Sunday night game. And, this time of the year, Sunday night comes around and, people are tuning in. And we had, I think our rate was 750 or something last week for 2 days ago for that BC Saskatchewan game, which was just a phenomenal football game. So again, how can you, when you know the league, to try to pick one game a week is really tough. It's really tough. So I'm not going to pick one game. We just went through all 4 of them.
Absolutely. And before we wrap this up, long term, do you see Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment doing enough to get the Argonauts back, to get more fans at BMO Field? I was at the East Final last year with Montreal, 21,000 people there, and it was as loud as I ever heard it there. Yeah. Do you think the Argonauts have the ownership group to get the franchise back on the map?
Well, they definitely do. In 2012, when we won the 100th, we were on the verge of turning the corner, and you could come out of the closet. You didn't have to be in the closet to be an Argo fan. You could be proud to be an Argo fan. And then our owner at the time fired the whole front office and basically started over with new people in the front office. And so we were on the verge then. If they can keep Chad Kelly and they can continue to winning, they have to win in order to have a chance to draw people. Sure, I think there's a chance that people will start coming out, and the more talk that Chad gets, they'll come out this year. And you're right. There's no better entertainment for your dollar than going out to BMO Field and watching the Argos play. Everybody who goes. I took a group of Ukrainian people who had never seen a football game, never seen one, and they had an absolute blast just because of everything going on. And it's something you have to go and experience. And MLSC will find a way to get people, especially if they keep winning. If you're not winning, people in Toronto are not coming out. And that goes for the Blue Jays. That goes for you need to, Maple Leafs probably don't need to win, but everybody else pretty much needs to win or people aren't going to come out.
Absolutely. And I'm a first-time season ticket holder this year, and I absolutely love it. I get to go to the games as a season ticket holder fan, and also I get to cover the team as a media member. And one thing too, Jim, before I wrap this up, one thing being a fan, but when you do media work, you see behind the scenes of the coaches and the players that the normal fans don't get to see either. So I'm getting another perspective of these athletes and the coaching and management side of it as well.
Yeah, that's good. And that's what you want to keep doing. You try to be around as much of it as you can.
Absolutely. And one thing I like about media, there's always something new to learn every single day and to work upon, and never, ever get complacent. Doesn't matter if you're an athlete or you're in broadcasting, you're in media, never, ever get complacent.
You're right there.
All right. Well, Jim, I want to say thank you so much for coming on my 311th episode today. And you have an open invite to come back on my show again in the future if you'd like to as well.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate it. It was a lot of fun, and best of luck to you on your endeavor.
Thank you so much, Jim. And I'll send you a copy of the audio version and the video version, and I'll let you know when our show airs on WQEE 99.1 FM. My show is done remotely from here, so I will let you know. But, Jim, thank you so much. Keep up the great work with TSN, and looking forward to the games this week.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Jim. All right, guys, that was season 6, episode 36 with Jim Barker, former head coach, GM, senior advisor in the CFL, 5-time Grey Cup champion, 3 times with the Argonauts, once with Calgary, once with Montreal as well. And I want to say thank you to Jim for coming on here today as well. Before we wrap up this show, guys, I'm going to play a little clip of a post-game interview with Bo Bichette, the Toronto Blue Jays, who was down in Buffalo last week rehabbing, and I was there for his game Thursday night against the Rochester Red Wings. And this is courtesy of my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe notification.
Had to jump for a ball, felt good. So, yeah, it was pleased.
Is this the last we see of you?
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Well,
Yeah.
So you're flying down to Cincy tonight then?
Tomorrow
morning?
All right. You didn't have a lot of chances at shortstop defensively. Do you have any concerns about like lateral mobility or anything like that?
I mean, I only got one ground ball, but like I said, I had to jump for one. I had to move around for a couple others that I didn't have to make the play on, so no, I don't have any.
So you were tested early in the first inning. There was that one little looper into left that you kind of considered going for, and you kind of broke a little bit, and you realized you didn't have a chance. Was that real good to just kind of get things going and just get it out of the way so that you knew that everything else was going to go pretty well?
Yeah, that was good, and then there was a ground ball that Argos made a good play on that one too. I went at it like I was gonna have to make the play, so yeah.
The home run, was that like just the icing on the cake kind of thing, or would you prefer to have let something out?
No, I think everything went well. I mean, not that I'm necessarily worried about results at any point, but I don't care what field I'm on. I want to get hit. So, yeah.
Bo, all the hits in your 2 days here, opposite field hits, was that obviously you're a guy who uses all fields, but was that maybe, something timing wise that you're feeling good that you could use opposite fields or all fields here?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of the hitter that I am. I don't think it was like an emphasis or anything, but I tend to be in a good place when I'm hitting the ball hard to the opposite field. So yeah, I think it was good.
You mentioned yesterday, obviously, getting the juices flowing, getting back up there, and excited to get back in the middle of this playoff race. Obviously, no one wants to be hurt at this time of year, so how exciting is it going to be to rejoin your teammates in Toronto tomorrow?
Yeah, it'll be cool to see them soon and get after it. It's an important stretch and a lot of important games. Adrenaline will be going, and that's what I mean. When you're a kid, you grow up hoping to be in those situations, and so yeah, I'm excited to be part of it.
I'm sure it was excruciating for you the last few weeks not being able to play. As you kind of look back and reflect on your time coming back, is there anything positive that you can take from that time?
Yeah, I mean, you never want to be hurt, but when you do get in a situation like this, you got to take advantage of it in the most ways you can. So for me, about just getting in better shape, I mean, really just setting myself up for the best possible finish that I can have and to help the team win. So, I mean, I think that's positive. Take advantage of the time off. But, yeah, I mean, it wasn't always easy watching the games. It's real hard watching the games. You want to be out there as a competitor. But, yeah, I think there's definitely positive things that come.
And obviously, you were only here for a couple days, but there's a lot of good young talent on this Bison's team. What was kind of your impression of the Bison's last couple days?
Yeah, a lot of good players. And I get excited to watch them play, to be honest. It's I try to remember what it was like being here and knowing that they're kind of, fighting for their dream. So I try not to take that lightly. I try to go out there and I try to help them win and play as hard as I can. So, yeah, and a lot of guys have a lot of good at-bats, a lot of talent. They care. They play hard, which is, to be honest, kind of good for me to see. You remember what it's like and see people fighting for life. And, yeah, I mean, I want to get back, but I enjoy being here.
And you may see some of the couple of these guys in a couple of weeks anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully a lot of them get a chance.
Well, question for you. What's it been like having Don Mattingly with the Blue Jays this year?
Yeah, it's been awesome. He's, obviously has all the knowledge in the world, all the experience. To be able to learn from someone like him is, I think, special for all of us. It's not a whole lot of ball players get to be around somebody like that. So he's definitely brought a lot. When he says things, he says it with conviction, which is helpful for us as ball players. And yeah, I've learned a lot from him.
Thank you so much, Bo.
Yeah.
I'll vote for the question. So we had a really good performance today, especially yesterday, and now tomorrow we're going to be going to that place, Cincinnati. How confident do you feel now moving back up to the major leagues to be able to face a team like Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm in a good place. The difference for me will just be dealing with like I said yesterday, the human nature of anxieties and pressures. And for me personally, I don't have that here. It's more about just getting back, and I'm not worried about the results, but there's times you can get into those moments when you get to the big leagues and things matter a little more. So I'll have to adjust to that for sure. But in terms of my swing and everything like that, I feel ready.
All right, guys, that clip was courtesy of my YouTube channel, and that was Bo Bichette, who's now back with the Toronto Blue Jays. And I want to say thank you to the Buffalo Bisons organization, Brad Bisbing, the assistant GM, and Pat Malacaro for having me come down there this weekend to cover a couple of the Bisons games against the Rochester Red Wings. I got to interview Matt LaCroix, the former Twins player, who's now the manager for Rochester, and I got to interview Buffalo Bisons prospect Cameron Eden and Hayden Yangling, a reliever as well. And it was a great time. If you've never gone down to a game down there, check out buffalobisons.com, Salin Field, beautiful ballpark in downtown Buffalo. And the Bisons this week are on the road for the next 6 games at the Syracuse Mets as well. I also want to do a shout out to Wayne McFarland, who's the founder and editor and writer for the Digital Briefing magazine. I want to say thank you to Wayne McFarland for having my podcast radio show in his magazine as well. So check out digitalbriefingmagazine.com. And again, shout out to Wayne McFarland as well. Next live with CDP Sports Talk, sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet, to be announced on Thursday. And speaking of that, the next Argo Bounce live audio show with my co-host Nick Small and myself will be this Thursday at 7 p.m. as Nick and I will just not break down, but we'll preview the game against the Calgary Stampeders and what are 3 keys to an Argo win over Calgary. And also talk a little bit about the CNE that's going on until September 4th. So I hope everyone can tune into the Argo Bounce live audio show Thursday at 7 p.m. with Nick and myself. Should be a great show. And I will announce my next live with CDP Sports Talk, which I have a couple of shows booked for next week. Just got to confirm dates and times with my guests as well. Also, guys, let's see. I want to say thank you to Jim Barker for coming on today live with CDP Sports Talk, and also live with CDP is a weekly sports and entertainment talk show, radio show hosted by yours truly, Chris Pame, is on weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern on WQEE 99.1 FM, The Key, the home of Southern sports and talk, the heartbeat of Atlanta. And a shout out to the station manager, Ryan O'Neill, there as well. Our radio station website is WQEEFM.radio12345.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk is live streamed on these platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Twitter /X, Twitch, and LinkedIn. And I want to say thank you to everybody for watching this broadcast today, live streamed as well. You guys can also check out my website at beacons.ai/Chris D. Pame as well. And also, guys, I've joined the Cameo family. So if you'd like a personalized video message from yours truly, just type in Chris Pame on cameo.com and book a request, and I will do my best to give you a great video shout out. And the money I make off Cameo will go into my radio and podcast show as well. So again, check Chris Pame out on cameo.com and consider booking me for a video shout out as well. And I'm happy to be a part of the Cameo family as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, again, is sponsored by Barry Cullen Chevrolet dealership at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall. Check out barrycullen.com for the newest selection of new and pre-owned GM vehicles as well. Also, guys, Summer Adventures event going on at Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph. 4.99% financing for up to 48 months on the 2023 Blazer RS. And more details at barrycullen.com or visit the dealership again at 905 Woodlawn Road West in the Guelph Auto Mall as well. Also, I am on TikTok. If you guys want to follow me on TikTok at Live with CDP on TikTok, I post a lot of my coaches, managers, players, and social events on my TikTok page again. So I Live with CDP on TikTok. And I want to say thank you to my 1,487 followers. And I'm hoping to get to 1,500 at some point as well. StreamYard is the official live stream provider of Live with CDP Sports Talk. If you're into webinars or podcasting such as myself, check out StreamYard.com as well. Live with CDP Sports Talk, the audio version is downloaded to iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify for podcasters, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Castbox, LinkedIn, Pandora now instead of Stitcher. That's Pandora, and tuned in. And again, weeknights at 8 o'clock on radio station WQEE 99.1 FM in Metro Atlanta. Also, guys, you can email or text Live with CDP at cpame19@gmail.com, or you can text me at 519-820-7188. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, I would love to hear your feedback as well. And that's about it, guys. That wraps up season 6, episode 36, overall 311. Again, I want to say thank you to Jim Barker, the CFL and TSN in-studio analyst, and he's been involved with the CFL since 1996 for coming on here today as well. And looking forward to the Argo Bounce live audio show this Thursday at 7 o'clock Eastern with Nick Small. And we're going to talk Argo football and their matchup against Calgary and some CNE stuff, as Nick has been down at the Canadian National Exhibition as well. And also Small Talk podcast. Hopefully this Sunday. I have to get more details, and I will make that announcement soon as well. And live with CDP Sports Talk, we'll be back next week. I have at least 2 or 3 more episodes booked as well. But I want to say thank you to Jim Barker. Thank you to everyone watching this live streamed, and also on my audio platforms and on WQEE 99.1 FM. And again, live with CDP Sports Talk is brought to you by Barry Cullen Chevrolet here in Guelph. I hope everybody has a great evening, and we'll see you guys Thursday night for some Argo Bounce live audio podcast show with Nick Small. Good evening, everybody, and thanks again.